All right. Good morning, good afternoon, maybe good evening. I think folks are starting to flow in. As you join, I think it'll be fun just to see where everyone is in the world. So if you want to maybe pop in the chat, your location, um, I will maybe get us kicked off with that here. Colorado. Very jealous of probably how cool it is out there.
Brazil.
Wow. Never been to Brazil. I don't know if either of you have, Jen, Kevin. Feel like it's been on my travel list for a little while.
I have
I've
not, but would love to sometime.
Me too. Given the conversation we were having just before we started this webinar, though, about how I deal with heat, I think it would depend on the time of year.
Makes sense. Maybe not for the Summer Olympics like Rio.
No.
All right. Well, I think we've got enough folks and I know people will be flowing in. I think we can kick it off and get started here. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is David Lee, and I lead business operations here at Rattle. I'm here today as your webinar host, and I want to thank everyone here for joining. Before we get started, I want to cover a couple of things. First, a few housekeeping items. So we will be recording the session and sharing a recording with you via email in a few days. Number two, we do have a Q&A tab. Feel free to ask questions through the webinar. If we don't get to all the questions, we'll follow up with a blog post after the event. But we'll keep this very conversational and casual and try to address questions as they come in. Lastly, a fun thing, Rattle will also be randomly selecting one lucky attendee to receive a $105 gift card. The marketing team will follow up, with the winner after the webinar. You also may be wondering, hey, like what exactly is Rattle? I want to just spend a minute with a brief overview of who we are. So Rattle has been around for about 3 years, and we've been innovating our product in ways to help revenue teams make their sales processes more repeatable, more scalable using automation and AI. We're focused on this because we know that when sales processes are followed consistently, it leads to better rep productivity and also data hygiene. This means that you don't have to chase your entire team and your reps around, constantly reminding them to input data. And most importantly, ultimately, the adherence to process leads to better win rates. We'd love to tell you even more about how Rattle works, the use cases, our customers, how they're seeing ROI, and whether it could help your organization. Kelly from our marketing team will put a poll up right now, so you can let us know if you're interested. And of course, in the future, you can connect with us in all the usual and expected ways. And with that, let's jump in and get started with our fireside chat. Today, we have Jenna Chambers and Kevin Harrelly from Terminus to speak about how sales and RevOps leaders achieve strong alignment and collaborate effectively to drive the entire revenue organization to win more. I'm especially excited about this as an ops professional because I know it will be filled with practical tips, examples that you could apply directly into your orgs. So now I'll turn it over to our speakers for a brief intro. Jenna, would love to have you go first to tell the audience about your role and a little bit about Terminus, and then we'll turn it over to Kevin.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So yeah, I'm Jen. I am VP of Sales and Partnerships at Terminus. I'm actually a lifelong marketer who ended up in some MarTech vendors working with partners, and so have kind of like slowly transitioned over to the dark side of sales. But in terms of Terminus and what we do, we are like a unifying go-to-market platform to help sales, marketing, and RevOps figure out how to take an account-centric approach to market. So the nice thing, you know, for Kev and for I is that our tool is being sold to our peers, and so we're very much kind of like subject matter experts, the same as our buyers are, and I think that kind of helps us geek out and have a great time at work every day.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And then Kevin, do you want to tell us a little bit more about you?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Kevin Hurley. I head up go-to-market revenue operations here at Terminus. Been here for just over 3 years, actually, this month. And my career in, I guess, software sales started about 13 years ago in sales, and then I've transitioned to account management and customer success, customer outcomes, and eventually here in operations and revenue operations. So I've kind of run the gamut of roles for the revenue side of software, and really love bringing that experience to the operations world and aligning with people like Jen to go to market.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think we've got two awesome veterans here, you know, in the domain, and so very excited to kick this off. Like I mentioned in the beginning, we'll keep this pretty conversational, and I'll just sort of provide big guiding topics. And so the first, I wanted to start relatively at a high level with how sales leadership, ops leadership, and I'll call this sort of what the relationship looks like and their cadence. And so to kick it off, Jen, would love to kind of explore at a high level, what does each week look like as you and Kevin and your teams collaborate?
Well, so I think we pretty much speak every day, like first and foremost in terms of like on Slack. So there's just a constant dialogue going between us throughout the week. But in terms of like how the week is structured for maybe like meetings with wider team members. So on a Monday, we sit down and we have a pipe council meeting. So that is marketing, sales, post-sales through onboarding, implementation, as well as customer success. What we do is we sit down actually with a dashboard that Kev has created for us for Pipe Council, and that covers all pipe sources and then the performance against those objectives. And then we are also looking at pipe progress as well. So it's looking at pipe creation, you know, sort of taking emotion out of it, just like what are the numbers telling us? Do we have the right blended pipe creation engine working, or are we too heavily reliant on one source? But then also like across those sources, how are those things performing? So we've got objectives and KPIs in terms of deal stage progression and, you know, time to close, et cetera, et cetera. And we use that to get ahead of potential issues. So if we can start to see that, you know, there's like a waning of pipe from one specific source versus one source, their deals are taking longer, it means that in Pipe Council, we can sit together and figure out what to do about that, as opposed to just react to it afterwards. Then we all sit down together about an hour after that. Again, most of the same people, but also like the wider go-to-market leadership. And that is basically us talking about all of the go-to-market department heads are talking about their initiatives, the challenges, the wins, what's working in certain departments. And that's where we just make sure that we stay aligned as a go-to-market leadership, and we're all sort of pulling in the same direction. That all happens on a Monday. So then on a Tuesday, Kev and I have our regular one-to-one sync, and that means that we can unpack everything that we spoke about on Monday and basically operationalize it and figure out how to action what came out of it, what we need to figure out versus what we just need to do. And then all of that comes almost full circle again on a Friday, where we have a forecast meeting where it's less about the pipeline, it's more about the deals that are in place. So, you know, it's almost like the forecast council, kind of peer to the pipeline council. And that all then circles back round into Monday's pipe council agenda because the same people are in that Monday and Friday meeting. So anything that's coming out of forecast on a Friday where we talk about deal sticking or issues or, regular problems that we see, we can feed that back into pipe council to make sure that we're generating more of the right types of opportunities and we don't keep, maybe getting stuck in the same loops over and over.
Yeah, I think that's so helpful just to see the Monday through Friday. And I love the structure. You've got kind of the bookends of the Monday and Friday meetings, but it seems like the Tuesday meeting is your one-on-one, you and Kevin. How does that usually go? And it seems like it's relatively an open agenda, free flowing. Does it kind of depend on some of what was uncovered through these dashboards and the pipe, council meeting? Um, Maybe some picture of that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Jen mentioned that I think really helps our Tuesdays be a little bit more productive is not just bookending on Mondays and Fridays, but the fact that it cycles back around to Monday. So what we learn throughout that week and what we uncover in the forecast meeting, it kind of creates this virtuous cycle, right? Of coming back to Monday's meeting. What did we learn the week prior? What can we do about it? And then I really like too it seems like a lot of meetings, but the secondary meeting there where we meet with the larger go-to-market org, we learn a lot of things from different departments, what they're thinking about, what they're working on. And obviously with me in operations and Jen in sales, there's a lot of impact from other parts of the company that we need to think about, especially with Jen being kind of on the front end of that, what is coming out of sales that has downstream impacts to other parts of the business. So when we unpack those things on Monday, like you said, it is a pretty open agenda with Jen and I, and it's really driven by, or in large part driven by what we learn out of those meetings. How can Jen and I then partner up to actually work on, what we learned? But obviously with Jen too, there's always going to be sales specific initiatives, sales specific things she's working on or that she wants to implement. She'll bring those things to that meeting as well. So it's not just, a recap of all the things happening in the larger org. But also, one-to-one things that I need to be aware of or that we can work on together.
Yeah, and I think the key for, not necessarily just the Tuesday meeting, but for our working relationship is that RevOps is not there to just run reports and build dashboards for, different parts of the org. Like Kev is very much like a strategic business partner. Like, so sometimes our Monday or our Tuesday syncs are more like, hey, I'm struggling with this, or I can't get the team to do this, or this is just not working right. And we just have more of a brainstorm as opposed to like going with a wish list of what needs to get done, which for me is super helpful, like candidly, especially because I don't come from the same sales background as a lot of the team, being able to kind of make sure that I'm getting input and guidance from Kev from a different perspective is really, really beneficial.
I love that, and I think that relationship, man, when the ops leader and the sales leader are in sync and are truly working as strategic partners, that's such a powerful combination. Um, I think as you were speaking, I've seen kind of as an ops leader, seen the pitfalls of ops leaders working in silos and potentially just kind of slightly more detached from the rest of the team. And so maybe would love to turn it over to Kevin here and just for you to paint a picture of how you work with even other parts of the org, other leaders, how you sort of pick up insights, across the entire revenue org.
Yeah, so this is something that I didn't start doing at Terminus until maybe the past year or so. But we've had the pipeline council meeting since I started, right? That was started by my predecessor, and she talks a lot about pipe council and how important it is. And what I started noticing, especially when we added the larger go-to-market leader meeting right after pipe council, is that there is so much that comes out of those meetings that, in 1 hour's time, I don't have time and we don't have time to really dig in as much as we might want to. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. What are we doing about that? So what I started doing not that long ago is this kind of follow-up one-on-one cadence with several of the leaders in the go-to-market org. And the point of that was not just to dig in a little bit more, but I do have that sales background, so I do ask a lot of questions and I get kind of curious on those things. But it's also to kind of help behind the scenes bring a little bit more alignment to the go-to-market org as well. So again, we mentioned in the go-to-market leaders meeting that there are things that come up, from a sales or marketing perspective that has a lot of downstream impact. Well, if I can then go meet with those leaders, sometimes with a few of them, it is every single week. With a couple of them, it's every other week. But coming together allows me to get a little bit better of a sense of what those focuses are, what challenges there are. And then I can then bring that back to other leaders, on a one-to-one basis. So, hey, I heard from customer success that this is happening. Jen, is there something we can do on the front end of the sales cycle to maybe help with that? And I think a lot of times those conversations don't happen as openly or as freely as they could or as they should. But in revenue operations, we are kind of the hub of all of that information, right? One of the purposes of RevOps, David, I know you know this, is to break down those silos or to make sure we aren't working in silos. It's easier said than done. And so if you can go have a personal relationship with every part of the revenue engine, the revenue part of the organization, now you've got the ability to start bridging gaps and having those conversations and letting people know, hey, did you know so-and-so is thinking about this? So to me, that's why it's so important to kind of have that one-to-one cadence after those meetings.
That's super helpful, and I do think that has become so important, just to be kind of the unifying force for ops. When you were speaking about this, kind of there's you getting a better pulse of all the different parts of the go-to-market organization, speaking to leaders, and then there's kind of communication line between you and Jen as well. Has there been anything recently where all of that kind of helped to spot something before it became a bigger problem, where you were able to, as an organization, move more proactively versus reactively?
Yeah. The thing that I think about when we start digging into that is months ago, maybe 6, 7 months ago, I was having conversations with a lot of people, especially in the post-sales, but even during the sales part of the sales cycle we've got, thinking about maybe our solutions consultants or different people that we want to get involved in the sales process earlier. We really wanted to start thinking about kind of a team selling motion. When does it make sense to bring certain people into a conversation? How do we keep everybody updated? Because even, I think a lot of people will add somebody to the opportunity, right, in Salesforce, and then that's it. Hopefully they go check that record and they see things getting updated. That to me didn't really satisfy the idea of a team selling motion that we would obviously hope have impact on those metrics that Jen was talking about. So what I started to do is kind of piece those things together and say, how do we actually bring everybody in, get real-time updates, without noise, but making sure that the solutions consultant doesn't miss key details from the last sales call that happened. Or even our ADR knows that successful conversations are still happening, or bring in marketing in different parts of the org. So what I did at that point was a little bit, rogue. I kind of took it into my own hands a little bit, but started working on this thing called deal rooms, which David, I know is just part of the Rattle suite that we're really, really leaning into. And then I think I was very lucky to have a partner like Jen in this process, because it wasn't something I went out and kind of asked permission for. It was, hey, I'm hearing from 7 different people that we want everybody coming together a little bit more on these. So I started playing with the idea, testing the idea. Jen and especially her team was very open to letting me experiment, letting me play around with this feature to try to solve this problem. And again, that came out of these cadences of so-and-so is saying one thing, another leader saying another thing. How can I go out and find a solution that addresses these challenges and just get something done? And that's, I think, an example of what can happen when RevOps puts themselves at the center of everything and tries to bring everyone together.
Well, and I think it's to that point, Kev, it's about that you were spotting like a problem you were seeing how big the problem was, whereas each individual person was like, it would be nice if, and you took all of those, it would be nice if, kind of put them together and went, actually, this is a business challenge that needs to be solved, and we need to figure this out. Because, like, you know, realistically, when you first mentioned to me, I'm going to create a deal room for every deal, I was like, oh, okay, that feels like maybe more admin, more noise. Like, I'm not entirely sure. So, but having seen the way that that has flowed out, clearly you knew the impact that that was going to have. And actually being able to see the summaries in those deal rooms of each call that happens without me, and it is helping the team. So without me having to ping each AE and say, hi, how was your call, and get their interpretation of it, actually being able to see like the AI kind of non-biased interpretation. So instead the question becomes like, hey, from this call summary, it sounds like blah, 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 blah. Do you agree? And then we're having a more open conversation, as opposed to them like almost trying to, almost trying to prove that they've done a good job. Whereas if you just go straight to somebody who goes, how did the call go? They tend to respond with, yeah, it was great. And that's sort of what you get. Whereas this lets you kind of get into the meat of the conversation. And then I think, it's all credit to the AEs that we have at Terminus, where they have just embraced these deal rooms. So once deals actually start kicking off and they need to start collaborating with other members of the team, those things are noisy. It's good. There's loads of chat in there. Like, there's lots of interaction, and it does mean that you're not constantly having to rebrief every new person who enters the deal. All the context is there, and I think everybody is really enjoying it as a new way of working.
Yeah, I love that. As you were both kind of explaining this dynamic at Terminus, I think I can clearly see that there's a lot of trust in between a lot of different parties and teams. And so I was thinking about this, where I remember when I used to reach out to reps directly, for instance, it almost seems like, hey, like I'm here to monitor something or figure out whether, something needs to be done so that someone is punished, or, like there is sort of a negative kind of impulse on the other end, especially with the sales team. So I was curious. I wanted to get both of your perspectives in terms of, kind of the end user reps outreach. Like, are there any practical ways in which we, kind of establish and grow that trust, where, like, Kevin, if you're reaching out to a rep, you just truly want to hear about what's going on. Like, Jen, as you're working with your team, like, this dynamic isn't kind of, big brother with a stick type of thing. So I was just kind of curious, both of your vantage points on establishing trust.
I think I would start by being a little bit of a cheerleader of Jen here, where because we've worked so closely together, the deal rooms I don't think would have ever taken off without her willingness to, again, allow me to experiment. And I can't just say this is going to solve XYZ problem, right? It is about having open lines of communication, about understanding what problems truly exist, and bringing that to a leader and saying, hey, let's try this. And a lot of people that I've worked with are willing to do that, but a lot of people also aren't. Like Jen said, there's a little bit of apprehension. Is this noise? Is this admin work? What's, with them? What's in it for me? What's in it for my team? But because Jen really leaned into the idea and started to try to see the benefit, I think that's trickled down to her team. And I think that she hit the nail on the head. We're truly lucky to have the AEs that we do here at Terminus that are willing to allow that to happen. But you mentioned kind of this idea of ops people kind of being perceived as the police, right? Or I need you to do X, Y, and Z or else. I think what's really helped me is to stay very, very kind of hyper focused on what's getting in your way. What types of things can we do that allows you to be more efficient, or that allows you to do the things that not only that you're good at, but that you enjoy doing. There's a reason you're in sales, and you're not in sales so you can fill out a field, right? So if I can go out and save you some time, save you some clicks, and allow you to do those things you enjoy doing, you might be more willing to then give me that feedback, because I'm listening and I'm going to go do something about it. I think that's one way that I've tried really hard to establish that trust, and one way that Jen's really helped with that.
Well, and I think trust is the key word. Like you've both mentioned it there. Like there's nothing that we've done at Terminus where I've come away thinking, what is Kevin talking about? That made absolutely no sense. That really didn't help. And so obviously, like that doesn't happen day one. Like you work together for a while to get to that point. So to the point that when he mentioned the deal rooms, and my instinct was, I don't really get it. But I trusted that he did, and he never recommends anything that doesn't actually genuinely help. So, but the AEs feel the same way because, like, just I guess to kind of summarize what Kev was saying, like he never just tells them we need to do blah or now you need to change this. He explains why, and he makes sure that they understand the impact it's not just going to have on them, but on the business. And there's definitely it definitely fosters like a team mentality as well, whereas like you're not, it's very easy as an AE to be a lone wolf, and that's really not the culture at Terminus. And that is, yes, it's RevOps and sales and how we work together. It is the wider culture as well, but people are not just in it for themselves. Like they know the impact on the business, and there's definitely like a team Terminus mindset that we tap into that really helps. And another thing that Kev has done, and I know he doesn't really want to show off about himself too much, but one of the things is like flipping it on its head from being like something that people have done wrong or they haven't done yet that they need to change, to kind of something positive and like almost like tap into that spirit of competition between the AEs. So one of those things is we have, instead of saying, you guys have not done enough self-gen, instead we've got a self-gen leaderboard that rattles every week in Slack, and it stack ranks the AEs. So it's not about you're at the bottom. It's more about like, yay, whoever, you're at the top this week. And it encourages number two to be like, oh, I just need to do one more. And then, it just kind of like feeds into that culture piece where I don't think any of our AEs ever feel like they're being wrapped on the wrist, which is, quite a big change from a lot of relationships between sales and RevOps.
That's awesome. It's the same list, right? But it's just a reframing, right? It's the achievement list, not the shame list.
Exactly.
I love that. I think, this has been incredibly helpful just to figure out all of the different relationship, the culture, the trust that's established, between all the different parties in the revenue org. And I can clearly see there are a lot of, great takeaways for the audience. Anything else just on this topic before we shift gears?
I would say the other piece of that is that we try really hard for it not to feel like this is something coming from sales, this is something coming from marketing, this is coming from RevOps. Like we try really hard to just be a go-to-market team that wins or loses together. And a big part of that is a Slack channel that we have about celebrating the wins. So every time a deal goes closed won, the deal pops in to celebrate the wins. And I've worked in companies before where that's just, a byproduct and nobody really pays attention. Like people really enjoy that celebrate the wins channel. And like Kev is like, I don't know if you've got it on some high alert notification or something, Kev, but he's the first one on each close one. It doesn't matter if it's new biz or existing biz, but he's on there with all the emojis, like cheerleading the team. And it's just so nice because it feels, well, I was going to say it feels like Kev's part of our team. He is obviously, but it doesn't feel like two different departments. It feels like we have won this deal, not sales has closed a deal.
I love that. I guess in a remote world, that's the sales gong, right? And Kevin, you're the first to give him a high five.
Yeah, go for it. And I've got to give a little credit to my prior boss, Mallory, because she was very much the same way. And I really picked it up from her that like Jen said, when we win together, right? And when we struggle, we're going to get through those challenges together. We're going to figure it out together. And again, I think it builds into that kind of motif of trust, right? Like we are on the same team. We're all marching to the same beat. We all have the same goals. Well, if I'm only there, to ask you for something or to say, hey, there's this new feature, yeah, it might help you out. But I also want to be the first one to give you a high five. I want you to know that operations is your cheerleader as well. We're cheering for you. We want to see your success. So I think that all kind of ties together really nicely.
Really, really love that. Would love to, and I think we've sort of touched on this already, but would love to shift gears to kind of forecast deal status, kind of the always on work of the revenue org to figure out where pipeline is and how it's ending up. Jen, would love to turn it over to you to kick off this topic around kind of tracking deal statuses and forecasts. You touched on deal rooms and other things, but what does that kind of look like on a typical week or month?
So I'll start at the start of the week. Every week on a Monday, Kev has set us up a rattle notification with the boards. That means that the reps get a summary of here are all of your ops that need a bit of hygiene. They have told me repeatedly how helpful that is, that they don't have to go into Salesforce into every single op, just like the admin and the time that takes to go make those updates. To be honest, they just weren't doing it. And then I was getting into meetings with them and I was like, oh, why have you not done them? And they're like, because we're trying to close deals, not do a whole amount of admin. So the fact that they can do one click, do everything on one page and just get on with their day and actually, you know, sell, because that is, you know, what they like to do and what they enjoy, has been great. So that notification goes out on a Monday. They know that there's pipe council on Monday afternoon, so they know that hygiene needs to be done before pipe council to make sure that we're not speaking about, you know, inflated numbers or wrong close dates, etc. Then we have another notification that goes out on a Thursday, again, just for things that have happened through the week, mainly if they haven't actioned what they needed to on Monday, but also there's a Friday forecast call as well. So again, that Monday, Friday, making sure that the hygiene is done ahead of that. I'll then sit down with each of the reps, usually on a Wednesday or a Thursday, to do deal reviews. So we go through deal by deal. And that is where the deal room has come in brilliantly. So rather than capturing that as like manager notes on Salesforce, I'm actually capturing that in the deal room so that whoever sourced the deal can see the progress. The SolCon can then see what the next steps are, and anybody else who's involved in the deal as well. So it takes a huge amount of communication away from the AE, where they don't have to go and tell each individual person. It's all just centralized in one place, and they can tag people in accordingly and get people working on things without having to find 15 minutes in calendars. Back to that remote world thing, like everybody's calendars are packed. So the more we can just get started, the better. And then I guess the other thing that we make sure that we do as part of those deal reviews is, as soon as we know that conversations are coming up about pricing, we make sure that deal desk that sits under Kevin is also in each of those deal rooms as well. So when we go and maybe ask for a change in payment terms or ask for a change in standard price book, there's the whole context in the background is already there because they've seen the conversations happening live, as opposed to just getting a hit in the deal desk Slack with a request for a change and being, you know, blindsided by it. They've probably been part of the conversation. They probably helped make the suggestion for what to do. So that request for a resource request to change the op or to make a change to the order form is just like the paper process being done at that point. It's not the start of the debate. So that's really helped, I think, change the relationship with Deal Desk as well.
That's awesome. You know, we use Deal Desk or deal rooms as our own feature, you know, but I think we currently have a separate Deal Desk channel and kind of do those things almost separately. So I think this is almost a good idea for us. And I think you've sort of sparked some of the ideas in my ops mind. It sounds like it's driving more velocity to kind of have everyone collaborate within Slack with all of the right context. And then what I heard was, man, reduce the time that folks are spending not selling, right? That kind of classic X percentage of time. Was that kind of the intent, Kevin, as you kind of sat and also architected these things from a tools perspective?
Yeah, to me it was, you know, there's 3 or 4 key metrics that I think most businesses, especially most sales ops and sales orgs, are going to measure, right? There's velocity, there's average deal price, there's, you know, those types of things that are really, really important. When we started thinking a lot about a team selling motion and how do we get people in and out of those conversations and keep people up to date, it became more and more obvious to me that those key metrics are all pretty much impacted if we can all get on the same page faster. So Jen's example of getting deal desk into the room, let's say at stage 3, we do have a resource request come in and we do have a deal desk channel, but those things would take a little bit longer than they needed to for SLAs because our deal desk team would have to go back and ask questions, right? And give me some context and what's been happening with the prospect or the customer. Why are we asking for this, that, or the other? Whereas now, because it hits a certain stage, we add our deal desk team to that channel. They get all the context well before, I mean, 2 stages before they would typically get a request for an order form or a certain discount approval, whatever it might be. So yeah, like we do see velocity improve just naturally because there isn't this back and forth. There's not a lot of chatter around things that you really should already know. And I would actually say, I was sitting here thinking about this, that as an ops person, and I bet you there's ops people on this call, I think it's important not just to roll these things out and wash your hands of them and move on. I actually am in every deal room from the moment they are created until the moment they're closed, and we convert those to customer channels, and I'm still in the customer channels actually. My philosophy here is that if I can deal with the noise from our entire pipeline of deal room channels, and I can stay caught up on those deals and I can see what's happening, I feel relatively confident that I'm also not overloading my team, right? So I think too often ops people may not put themselves in those shoes and they may not actively participate in the things that we build. Sometimes we do, but this has been something that I found to be very important. So the different signals we go through with Rattle, Jen mentioned the Monday, Thursday notifications. I get all those as well, right? So I actually can send our AE team, as sometimes I do specifically say, hey, I noticed you don't have anything to clean up on this Thursday. Nice job. So it's just these little things, I think, where it's I'm in the trenches with you. I'm seeing the things, I'm seeing the notifications, I'm seeing maybe there is too much noise here. Let's pull some things out. They don't have to come to me and ask for that. I can be proactive. So I think we're going to come back to trust, I think, a lot, but I think that builds that trust, knowing that I'm not just some ops guy in a silo, building things in a vacuum. I'm going to build them, and then I'm going to subject myself to those processes and see, are these accomplishing what we want to accomplish? Bigger deal size, faster velocity, so on and so forth, but also, is it happening in a way that is non-intrusive and non-disruptive? I think those things are also very, very important.
Yeah, I think as well, like the way things end up being used is a huge thing. So, I think everybody is sort of learning that you kind of have to keep an eye on the deal rooms. And when you're added into something, it's time for you to go look, and you can look back at the context as opposed to having to read every single message in every single deal room. And the fact that Kev's made that very clear that that's how that works means that it wasn't overwhelming from the start. So I was actually just having a quick look, like one of the last big deals that we won, there were 16 people from Terminus involved in that. So if you think from the AE side of having to have gone and spoke with every single one of those people, pass on the information, give them the context, brief them, make sure that they spoke to this other person, that would have taken so much longer than it did when everything could be centralized in that deal room. So it does make a huge efficiency gain and saving. And as well, the AEs like it because there are other parts of the organization that start to give them suggestions, jump in with ideas for next steps, or this is how the normal sale would go, but I've spotted that this is happening. How about we try this instead? And it feels more like the sales person is more like the conductor of the deal, as opposed to they're just out there doing it on. And I definitely think that, well, in fact, I know because we were here for a while before deal rooms were here, doing that without the deal room, without that single place to do it is more difficult. And I think it probably led to less good ones as well.
Yeah, I think that's I think it's such a good illustration of how the entire team, as well as you and Kevin, need to be aligned. And it sounds like from the ops perspective of like, hey, we're gonna create this, roll it out, the rep participation, even sales leadership participation in building it it almost ensures before it's even launched that there's going to be adoption, that people will look at it. There is kind of the intent that's being communicated through the process, whether it's a deal room, whether it's a dashboard or something like that, that that their concerns are being addressed, as through the building process. So it seems like that works with whether it's deal rooms or other new things that are being rolled out.
Absolutely. Exactly. And I think as well, like it goes back to that idea of we win or lose together. Yes, it's technically that AE's op, but we as a business need to win that deal. And so people feel a bit of ownership and they feel like they've got some skin in the game. I've definitely worked at companies before where you don't really know anything that's going on. You're pulled in for your small bit of a deal, then you're pushed back out again, and somebody will either tell you we won it or we lost it, and that's all that you have. Whereas this, when we win deals, yes, they're very, the rest of the company are very happy for the AEs, but they also feel like they played a part. And that's a really nice kind of, team building thing that is inadvertently come out the side of it as well.
I would say too, just really, really quickly, that it reduces the likelihood for single points of failure as well. Just as an example, if one person from deal desk is working on this deal, then they go on vacation or they get sick or whatever it might be, which has happened here. They can hop in and they get the full context as well. Whereas David, you mentioned, or maybe it was Jen, imagine having to go to all 16 of those people individually. Yeah, that's a pain and it slows things down and it's kind of terrible. But also all that communication is gone. It's in a black hole. So if that person's gone and those direct messages, are not accessible by the rest of the team, you have to have all those conversations again, right? Whereas if we really do try to have as many conversations in public forums as we can, this isn't whole company public, but it's still pretty public for people that need to be involved. Now you can just add me to the room, add another teammate to the room, take 5 minutes, get the summary of what's been happening in that channel, and you're caught up and you're ready to go. So I think a lot, and I'm David, I'm sure you think about this too, about single points of failure and how scary they can be to a business and to operations. This really reduces the likelihood that we deal with those problems. So I really like that as well.
I love that. And I think that's absolutely on point. Like this is a slight tangent, but I feel like I started off my ops career being more of an introvert kind of in the org. And I thought if I just built the best thing in my corner and then just turned it on, that it would work magically. But I think it's important to be extroverted and then, be able to proactively spot those potential single points of failure. So I really love that. Cool. I'd love to sort of move on to the next topic. Any other point that either of you would want to make before we move on?
I think so.
Awesome. So I think this is a very fun, and relevant one for a lot of folks on the call. I mean, we are all currently living through the AI boom, and we're trying to figure out ways in which that helps us as professionals working in the revenue org. So it begs the question of, how is this AI boom potentially helping to bring more alignment between either both of you, the rest of the team, or bringing, better efficiency in general to the revenue org?
Yeah, so I think first I would be remiss not to mention, I think I've been very impressed with certain companies and certain vendors leaning into some promise here. And I think Rattle is doing an amazing job, doing that, where it's, getting meeting intelligence after the call. As Jen mentioned that earlier, she doesn't have to go to Gong and or whatever conversational intelligence tool you're using and remember to listen to those and spend the hour listening to those. Like, we proactively get those notifications with AI generated summaries and custom prompts where I'm looking for red flags and likelihood to close. I also think there's an opportunity here for operations folks to really lean into practical applications of AI, where a lot of what I see on LinkedIn right now or in other webinars Not all of it, but a lot of it is very theoretical, very conceptual. What does it mean? What does it mean for the future of our business and our roles? Whereas I think what I'd like to see and what I'm trying to do more of is lean into the practical application of what we can do. There's so much data available. There's so much information available to us right now, especially through call transcripts, you know, that you can tap into via APIs and things like that, where one example that I'm really leaning into right now is I set up an integration, you know, that'll consume that transcript from our CI tool. I'm putting that transcript now through a series of custom prompts through I'm doing it through OpenAI, ChatGPT,
Mm.
and I'm looking for very specific information from that series of prompts. And I think, well, not I think, then the next thing that I do with that information is I then map those outputs to specific fields in Salesforce. And so the best example I've got, or I guess a couple of examples I've got just from earlier today, think about your ADR, your BDR, SDR. You know, they go out, they have that qualification call, right? Then they've got to go in typically into Salesforce and fill out a bunch of qualification notes, fill out a bunch of fields, what makes them qualified or disqualified. Well, one thing that I'm doing is I'm grabbing that call and I passed in what qualification looks like to us and what we're looking for. And that is now filling out in a rich text way in Salesforce, you know, what are those qualification things and where does the prospect fall on those different factors? Another very practical example, that saves our SDR time. But
Mm.
for our AEs, we use medic here at Terminus. That's our sales methodology. Each one of those letters, you know, can be several fields to fill out. It can be a lot of context to try to remember. And I'm actually doing that now through this integration that I've built. So it's, you know, let's say the champion, for example, who is the champion? What motivates them? What are they doing internally in that organization? Our reps don't have to go fill that out. And every single phone call that they have, that context is getting enriched. So maybe we don't know who the decision maker is after the first call, but we learn it on the second call. That's going to get updated and we're going to get better and better and better information after every single call. And I'm still thinking a lot about where else can I use this? Not just medic, not just qualification notes, but things like use cases, you know, customer pain points, what gaps are they trying to solve? And I just want to encourage other operations people to think more practically about how AI can not just get me better visibility and yourself better visibility, but how can it save our people time while still giving us that visibility, that data that we need, right, to learn and get better, and potentially even solve for some blind spots, right? So that's kind of my, at the end of this conversation, right? That's kind of my call to action, you know, that I'd love to see from other RevOps folks is how do we use all of this available information and all of this brand new technology, not for our own gains, but for the kind of quality of life improvements to our end users. I think there's so much potential. I just want to see more people talk about that practical application.
I
Yeah,
love
that
how that was architected. Oh, go ahead, Jen. I was going to ask about the impact on your org and in your
oh
workflow,
well,
whether it's helped.
which like we're evangelize. I mean, we sort of started off. It was part of the whole, like, you know, how do we get the relationship right between RevOps and sales? But then, you know, Kev keeps coming to us with these things that we've developed a hashtag like in RevOps we trust, because it's like we don't even know that we need these things. Like nobody went to Kev and went, you know, I really hate filling out all these Salesforce fields. Could you just please do it for me? Because, you know, that would be ridiculous. No AE can ask for that. But he just did it. And he found his champion. He found an AE that he knew he could test it with, and he made sure that it worked with them. He just didn't just do it to them. And it's a complete game changer. Like the AEs are about falling over themselves. They're just so happy because, of course, you don't want to go and complete Salesforce fields all day long. But then from my side, I'm like, okay, well, if you don't complete the Salesforce fields, either I do need to go listen to the whole gong call, or I need to sit down and talk to you about every single detail of every single deal. And we just don't have time to do that. So the fact that this is happening and that we can then just get straight to red flags, what to do next, what the triggers are. One of the first times that we did this, one of the summaries came back and Kev said to one of our AEs, like, does this sound right? And he was like, yeah, it does, but there's just this extra bit in here. I don't think we discussed that. And we went back to the gong call, and yes, they had that conversation, but the AE had forgotten. So even if they had filled out those notes perfectly, they'd already forgotten that part of the conversation, so it wouldn't have ended up on there. So there's just been a game changer from again, back to stop having people just have to do admin and give them the brain space to think about, how can I better help this prospect, and how can I make sure that we're putting together the best possible solution for them, as opposed to, okay, I'm going to have to set aside hours each week to sit and do all of my Salesforce updates.
Wow. That example is so powerful because it just brings so much information synthesized in a way where we have so much more surface, just coverage, and kind of just the relevant pieces of information that we may be forgetting or we may have missed. So that's such a powerful example to illustrate that impact. I think on this example, what I'm taking away is we started the conversation with thoughtful ways to structure the meetings, the revenue org cadence, the building block of trust. And then now I see kind of the proactive ways in which, like, you and Kevin are thinking about helping the reps, continuing to sort of, press the agenda of that being forefront, right? Of how do we continue to make the reps more successful and saving time, eliminating things that are wastes in their day. And so I think that's sort of a really great way in which ultimately that brings alignment to the org, but between you and Kevin as well. So I loved kind of that example and how you brought home that point. Anything else that you would add on kind of the future, and how you're thinking about continuing this work of improving the productivity of your sales team, the sales velocity? Any other points you would mention on this topic?
I think I'll just say that sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So like when you ask us right now, probably the answer is no, we've cleared the list. We've done everything that we've said we're going to do recently. But I think we're both naturally quite curious people, and we're relatively like creative thinkers. So we think quite similarly, which does really help. And I do think like we'll come out of meetings like almost like eyeballing each other, like we're going to get together and do something about this. So it feels like the job's never done. Like there's constantly more improvements that need to be made, but we certainly don't have any immediate kind of big initiatives, Kev, unless you can think of any that I don't have on my list that I should.
Not in regards to any big initiatives, but I think one point I failed to mention earlier that I really enjoy about my working relationship with you, with you, is that it isn't just excuse me, like a ticketing system, like, hey, we need this. One thing that I've really enjoyed about our working relationship is our working sessions. So like that dashboard you mentioned earlier, the pipeline council dashboard, or even your sales specific dashboard that you've got, it wasn't just an email or a Slack, hey, I need a sales specific dashboard or a pipeline council dashboard. We got together, we brainstormed it a little bit during our one-on-one. We scheduled a couple of follow-up meetings to actually just sit down and hammer it out together. And not only do I think that was a faster, better way to get it done, but I think the outcome was better as well, because I would add something to a report and Jenna would say, oh, can we tweak it a little bit like this? Again, that process takes 2, 3, 4 weeks sometimes of just back and forth. Whereas we could bang it out in a couple, 1-hour sessions, and we've got a dashboard better than we would have gotten just of weeks of back and forth. So not only is it faster, but your outcomes are better. So I'd really encourage people to go and find opportunities to, back in the day, right, to go get on a whiteboard in a room. Well, it's hard to do now, but you can do it, you know, through Zoom and sharing screens and having those working sessions. So don't just limit yourselves to those scheduled meetings. Find time to work together, find time to roll up your sleeves. I think so much can be accomplished that way. So
Awesome. Um, I really appreciate you both hopping on and sharing your thoughts. I think it really painted the picture of what a healthy relationship looks like between ops and sales, and kind of all the elements that bring more alignment between the two different functions. So thank you for your time. Thank you everyone for joining. As I said, the recording will be available after the webinar. Have a good one,
Thanks for
everybody.
having us.
yeah, thanks, David.